Welcome to MMA Fancast. My name is Luke Payson, and I am excited to have a first-time guest on the show. But before we get to our first-time guest, a special welcome to all of those of you who are already subscribers to the channel, and an even bigger welcome to those that aren't quite yet a sponsor, or I'm sorry, aren't quite yet a subscriber to the show. Please subscribe if you haven't already, so you can get more great interviews, including this one coming at you now with our first time guest of the show, Joao Martinez. Welcome to the show, sir.
Hey, Luke, how's it going?
It is great to have you. This is kind of a fun experience for me. First time guest on the show. I met you in person at a couple of your MMA fights. Typically, I have people on the show first and we get to meet through pixels like this, and then I get to meet them in person. So I'm kind of glad it's opposite, but it's still a great honor to have you on the show for the first time. You are representing Stout Pittsburgh Gym, which is the two-time back-to-back 247 award Gym of the Year and Coaches of the Year. Pretty exciting stuff. You have a fight coming up for Brawl in the Burgh 247 Fighting Championships on February 24th, which is all types of exciting. Before we get to that, though, let's wind back the clock. What sports, what athletics, what martial arts did you do before MMA? What were your experiences? What did you like about it? And then what led you into MMA? Because I always like to get to that with your first time on the show.
All right, so first martial art that I did was karate, and I started that when I was younger. I was about 6 or 7 years old, and then I did that up until I was about 15. So after that, I kind of just fell out of love with it. I was competing, I was winning competitions, but I wasn't like a fan of the point stuff. So fell out of love with it and just stopped doing martial arts. I still watched some boxing, watched the UFC, didn't really watch any other MMA promotions besides that. Um, but then I think right when I was about like 20 years old, I was like, I kind of miss this. So I'm gonna go try it. And I went back to doing karate, and I did that for about 2 months. And I didn't really like the point stuff again. I wanted to get into some full contact stuff, so I just typed MMA gyms into Google. That was the first one that came up, and that's how that started.
Okay, all right. Well, that's a great journey. So take us from there. You typed in MMA gyms, Pittsburgh. I believe Stout has maybe somewhere between 3 and 5 gyms. I know they got a Zinian they've got a downtown, they've got a south side. I think they've got several, so everyone should go check out their various gyms. They also do a great job of being Google heavy. You can find their information. What was it like the first time you went to one of their practices or whatever? And what was your experience with both the fighters and the people that are there, the gym members, as well as I've known Mike Wilkins since he was 18 and a freshman. Waynesburg University had the honor of coaching him in track. He was also here for wrestling. So I literally go way back with Mike. He's got an incredible personality. But what was it like when you got to meet the coaches, and how long were you going before you were like, this is going to be my home gym?
So I think I fell in love with it like as soon as I got there. The first class that I did was a Muay Thai class with Coach Will,
Sure.
and just every detail that he gave on everything and the reasoning behind what we're doing, the concepts, it just got me really interested. And then there's this guy, his name's Joel. He doesn't train there anymore. He moved to Nashville. A lot of the stout guys will remember him. So he was asking people for sparring partners, and me having done karate before, I'm like, oh, I know how to spar. And Joel beat my ass. And when that happened, it wasn't like some sort of demoralizing thing to me. I was like, wow, this is how good someone can get. So just got hooked on it and decided to keep going.
Well, that's also a great, I mean, again, it's the way you interpret. Life is rarely about what happens, it's more about how you interpret what happens. But what's cool about you is you were seeking full contact, obviously, from the karate background. You get there on your first time, you spar with Joel, and to your perspective, which is really great, reason why you're a fighter, is you're like, wow, this is full contact. This is what I actually want to experience. So that's really great. I also know you took your first MMA fight pretty soon after that, right? Maybe 3 or 4 months of training. And what has it been like? You've had 2 MMA fights for 247 fighting championships, both losses. So, obviously on the record, not a great start to the fighting side, to the actual getting into the cage. What have those experiences been like for you? You're obviously coming back for the third time. going to be fighting a guy who's 1-0. So he's still early in his career. You're 0-2, but you're still early in your career. What are your thoughts on the 2 fights you had for 247?
So it was actually a little over a year of training that I
Right,
had at Stout before I started,
right.
before I took my first fight. And I've actually only had one fight for 247. I had that fight that was in October, I think, but it got canceled like 5 minutes before it started.
Oh,
So
the guy
yeah,
dislocated his shoulder.
yeah, that was it.
Oh,
Um,
poor kid,
but
man.
I did actually lose a Muay Thai fight. So yeah, still 0-2,
Okay,
but I learned a lot from it. I went into my first MMA fight not well rounded at all. Like I definitely was focused on the full contact striking stuff and took it too early. It wasn't a bad decision on anybody's part but mine. I was pushing to get the fight. I wanted the experience, and I learned from it. Um, Defensively, I feel like I did very well in the fight compared to how long Craig had trained. I was scared of getting knocked out, and I didn't. I had good timing on my shots, but I wasn't good at wrestling, didn't know how to wrestle, couldn't finish the takedowns, and my jiu-jitsu game was very minimal. I'd probably only been training jiu-jitsu for about 6 months at that point. So when I was on my back, there wasn't much that I felt that I could do. Um, but it worked out well in my favor because it gave me a lot of data to draw from. So things like ring control or being more aggressive whenever I'm, defending, I need to be countering, all of that stuff. It showed better in my Muay Thai fight. Wasn't quite where I wanted everything to be, but everything that I've been doing so far has been slowly giving me progress that I've been looking for. I was booked for a fight with Cam Smith in July of last year. And at that point, I was like, okay, my striking's good. His striking's decent. And I don't think he has anything for me on the ground. So I'm really going to work on my wrestling. And I dialed down on my wrestling. Um, and then whenever I had that fight with Tanner, I thought I was going to fight him again in December. So I'm like, okay, my striking's good. My wrestling is sort of where I want it to be, but he's been wrestling for over 4 years. So let me not try to beat him where his game is at. I'm going to keep working my striking and I'm going to focus a little more on jiu-jitsu. So everything that I've been doing has just been trying to fill holes in my game. So it's been almost a year since my last fight. So I'm not really worried about Mike's record. I know he has one fight and that's technically undefeated, but I think that I train hard and I trust that he's training hard too. And I'm taking him as seriously as he's taken me. And it's going to be a good fight.
yeah, I think that's what's really great. I appreciate you giving feedback on your fight so far, and like you said, they're data collection points, right? And it is tough. There's no way to truly know what's going to happen in a live fight inside a cage until it happens. And sometimes things go well. You had some moments in there. You also, were fighting a guy in Craig Perry who had gone through a ton of his own adversity, right? So in some ways, it's like kind of as part of the fight game, right? You're not going to win every one, but you figure it out from there. What's really cool about Mike Rattani is he's coming from a gym that's kind of new to the MMA 247 MMA scene. Obviously, Stout is a fixture. They just got awarded. They just got awarded new regional gym of the year, and of course, you guys are back to back gym of the year. I think that's exciting. I think not only are you a great up and coming young amateur fighter, and he's a great up and coming 1-0 guy, but also you come from gyms that clearly know how to increase and develop fighters, and that makes a big difference too. He was on the show a little bit before, and he predicted a stand-up war. Now, obviously, that could be mind games. Who knows? He could come out and shoot a double. We've all seen it. But what you mentioned, knowing that he's going to train hard, you're training hard. What type of fight do you want to put on? Obviously, you're still in the business. You want to get back in there. I think Stout is always going to be rooting for you. Mike comes from a gym with a lot of support because I think it's kind of in his home area. So what do you expect from the fight? And what are you kind of hoping comes out of the fight February 24th, Brawl in the Burgh 20?
Well, I think I'm just going to take the path of least resistance. Honestly, if he wants to have a war, that's not what's going to happen. I'm going to do whatever it's going to take to win. I've been working on making myself a lot more well-rounded, and I do believe that my striking is better than his. So I am expecting it to just be mind games. I do think he's just going to try to shoot a double on me or a body lock or whatever he's going to try to do, but I've been working on my wrestling too. And if I start getting pieced up, it doesn't have to be anything crazy. You light me up once or twice, all right, I'm double legging you too. we can play that game. I want to win this fight, and I'm
Mhm.
going to do whatever it takes to win.
Yeah, I think obviously that's a super mature. I know you're still early in your MMA career. You train with an absolute legend in Mike Wilkins. Ton of great amateur and pro MMA fights. Fought for a world title for CFFC. Got to see him fight in Philadelphia. And that's part of it, right? Part of it is the coaching that kind of says like, hey, MMA particular, I'd say any fight, but in boxing, you got to win with only two weapons, right? So it's going to kind of look somewhat similar, but I think in MMA, excuse me, there is a bunch of variety. And while there's nothing wrong in MMA fighters deciding to, hey, I want the fight to go a certain way, I think path of least resistance is what MMA was designed to be, right? Beat them where you can, beat them where you're the strongest. If that happens to be, we've seen it in UFC. If it happens to be taking somebody down, letting them back up. If it happens to be, it sometimes looks like a Muay Thai fight in there. I love those fights, right? But that's because both fighters are thinking they're getting the better of the exchange and they want to stay there. To your point, there's absolutely, it's part of the game to say, hey, where can I win the easiest and the best? We've had a fighter before. He's a great guy. Shout out to Ace Christner, but he has apologized before about getting a quick submission, which we all told him never apologize. That's the point, right? But he always thought I got to put on these wars, these back and forth. He fought to a draw. These really back and forth wars. And while they're entertaining, path of resistance is the way to actually increase your skill level. So shout out to anybody that kind of wants to put on wars. But to your point, it's really about winning and winning the best way you can for your growth. And that goes for anybody.
Yeah, I think longevity is important. And at the end of the day, I do want to take this as far as I can. I didn't start this to half-ass it. So the crowd might be mad. I think most people, if they understand grappling, they're going to know that I'm going to put on a show. So if it's some like knucklehead that doesn't know anything about grappling, that's on them. That's not my problem. I'm going to win the fight and I'm going to progress my career forward so I can keep putting on shows for people.
Yeah, and I would say you do get more of those knuckleheads at like the UFC level or some other promotions. You come from Stout. You come from a gym that is literally a Gracie gym. So you come from a gym where pretty much anybody that's there from the gym or to support the gym enjoys all aspects of MMA. But obviously, Stout even puts on jiu-jitsu tournaments and competitions, things like that. So I think you come from a background where there's going to be a lot of people there particularly from Stout that love the jiu-jitsu element. So I don't think there's a lot of risk of that. I do think you just have to have the mindset you just did there, where people aren't fighting your career for you. You are, so you get to decide what happens. And even as coaches, even as what the game plan is, you still are responsible for what happens in there. So that's a big deal. That's very exciting. I'm assuming there's a bunch of Stout guys on the card. Not everybody has been announced. Of the people that have been announced, is there anybody that stands out to you that you're excited to see? And I'm trying to think who else. Obviously, Lucas Siebert is a big one making his pro debut. So I'll just ask you the question because I want to make sure you don't reveal somebody that you might know is fighting but hasn't been announced yet. So let's just ask, what's it been like training with Lucas? What's it been like seeing him? He's been there probably just a little bit longer than you, but around the same time, what's it like seeing his career progress? And what does that tell you about sort of not only his ability, what do you predict in the fight, but also sort of you on a path of developing into, like you said, to see how far as your MMA career can go?
I think it's great training with Lucas. That's like he really lays out a blueprint for what you should be doing as an amateur MMA fighter. He's just constantly evolving, constantly training, and yeah, just taking on challenges. Everything that he's done has always been a step up from the last thing that he's accomplished. And I think the best thing about Lucas is also his self-belief. Um, it doesn't matter if nobody believed in Lucas, Lucas would believe in himself, and that's one of the greatest things that I take away from him. Um, and sparring sessions too. It's always great to learn from him. You know, he whoops my ass a lot, but the people I'm going to be fighting aren't Lucas, so I'm not worried about it.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, that's one of the hard things about finding a great gym is you can't really ever be the best fighter in the gym, or else that's probably a challenge. They have to bring in other fighters to continue the process, and that sometimes happens, right? Sometimes gyms realize, oh, our fighters are kind of at a talent level where we have to grow, and that's great. That's what part of MMA is. So hats off to you. Hats off to the champ Lucas, or yeah, the champ Lucas Siebert. Very exciting stuff out of Stout as always. And congratulations to Coach Mike and Coach Will. You mentioned Coach Will on your intro to getting to Stout on being two-time coaches of the year as well for 247. Really shows some great stuff out of Stout. I really appreciate you coming on. It's always special to have somebody on for the first time. Brawl in the Burgh 20, 247fighting.com is the place to get tickets, but they are buying them from you. So even though people will be going to 247fighting.com and not physically getting tickets from you, if they select your name, you still get credit and you still get a commission because they are buying it from you. So just to throw that out there, sometimes people think if they buy it online, it's just going to the promoter. That's not the case. 247fighting.com will give you the opportunity to pick a fighter, and picking that fighter, if they're there to see you or to support you, gives you a commission. And that's one of the reasons why, like you said, Lucas Siebert gives a blueprint, not only in the training side, but also in the promotion side. They're getting people excited to watch him fight. That's all part of it. You have people excited to watch you fight. I'm one of them. I'm also excited to see how the rest of the card goes, because February 24th at the Murraysville Sports Complex is going to be an absolutely incredible night of MMA. I appreciate you coming on the show. You've been listening to Luke Basin with MMA Fancast, and first-time guest on the show, Joao Martinez. Thanks so much, Joao, for coming on the show.
Appreciate you having me. Have a good night.
I appreciate you. Best skills to you. Can't wait to see all the live action 247 Fighting Championship, February 24th. You take care.